I built an $8 million company to support my family, only to hear my parents say, "We gave your shares to your sister. She needs them more." My dad smirked, "You can always make more money." "She can't." I just said, "If you say so." That night, I pulled out all my investments. That was only the beginning. They never saw what was coming next. I built an $8 million company from nothing, pouring my entire life into it, only to have my own father look me in the eye and say, "We've given your shares to your sister. She needs them more than you do." Can you believe the audacity? My mother just nodded, and he even smirked, adding, "You can always make money, Jennifer." "She can't." The betrayal hit me like a physical blow, but all I could manage was a quiet, "Is that so?" That night, I pulled every single one of my personal investments out of the company. And trust me, that was just the beginning. Before I dive deeper into this unbelievable story, tell me where you're watching from in the comments, and if you want to hear more stories about standing up for yourself, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Growing up in Millfield, Ohio, my family never had much. My parents, Richard and Margaret Wilson, lived paycheck to paycheck. Dad worked at the local factory, and Mom juggled odd jobs. Our small, two-bedroom house was always falling apart, and Dad could never afford the repairs. My sister, Charlotte, was 3 years younger, and she was diagnosed with asthma early on. It wasn't life-threatening, but it was enough to solidify her role as the fragile one, the one who needed special care. Her medical needs always came first, over my school activities, over anything I might have needed. By the time I was 10, I understood the unspoken family rules. Charlotte was the one to protect, and I was the responsible, self-sufficient kid who shouldn't cause any more trouble. I never complained when my parents missed my school plays because Charlotte had a doctor's appointment, or when I got hand-me-downs while Charlotte got new clothes because of her allergies. I just accepted it. But even then, I had this drive, this entrepreneurial spark. At 11, I ran the most successful lemonade stand on the block, meticulously tracking every single penny. By 14, I was fixing neighbors' computers, charging $15 a pop when the local shop charged $60. Mr. Peterson, down the street, taught me the ropes. He saw something in me. "You have a mind for business, Jenny," he'd tell me. "Don't let anyone tell you different." Throughout high school, I worked constantly shelving books, grocery store shifts, tutoring math. Most of my earnings went straight into the household fund. When Charlotte needed a new winter coat or Dad's truck broke down, I'd silently hand over my savings. No one ever explicitly demanded it, but the expectation was always there, heavy in the air. When college acceptance letters came, I chose State University over Cornell, even with a partial scholarship to Cornell. State was closer, more affordable, and it meant I could keep working and supporting my family. I majored in business, completely fascinated by entrepreneurship. That's where I met Ryan Davis in my sophomore year. He was a software genius, but he'd admit he had zero business sense. We were paired for a project, creating a theoretical business plan, and our skills just clicked. We came up with this digital marketing platform that got the highest grade in the class. "We could actually build this, Ryan said, as we celebrated over coffee. "It's not just theoretical. The market needs this." My parents, though? They were always skeptical about my business dreams. "A good, stable job with benefits is what you need," Dad would say. Mom would add, "Not everyone can be a big success story, honey. Sometimes it's better to be practical." Meanwhile, Charlotte dropped out of community college after one semester, claiming it wasn't her thing. She bounced from retail job to retail job, never keeping one for more than a few months. Each time she quit or got fired, my parents would say she just hadn't found her passion, or that the manager had it out for her. After graduation, I got a decent job offer from a marketing firm in Chicago. It was enough to support my family and start my own life. But that entrepreneurial fire Ryan had ignited wouldn't die. We'd been talking about our idea constantly, and Ryan had even started developing some preliminary software. The night before I was supposed to accept the corporate job, Ryan called me. "I just quit my job," he announced. "I'm going all in on our idea. Are you with me or not?" It was the hardest decision I'd ever faced. Safety versus risk. Predictability versus potential. Accepting my designated family role versus defining my own path. "I need to think about it," I told him, my mind racing. I barely slept that night. By morning, I had my answer. I called the marketing firm and declined their offer. Then I called Ryan. "Let's do this." The early days were brutal. Ryan and I lived on ramen noodles and coffee, working out of my tiny apartment. We shared a single desk, taking turns using it. We developed our platform, refined the business model, and created pitch decks during 18-hour workdays. Our first bank loan application was rejected. The loan officer barely even looked at our plan. "You don't have enough collateral or experience," he said, without looking up. "Come back when you've been in business for at least 2 years." Walking back to my apartment that day, I cried. Not just because of the rejection, but because I'd received a text from my mother during the meeting, asking if I could send $300 for Charlotte's car insurance. It was like the universe was determined to remind me of my designated role, the responsible one, the provider, the safety net for everyone else, while having none myself. Ryan found me on a park bench, staring at the rejection letter. He didn't offer empty platitudes. He just sat in silence for a few minutes. "We don't need them," he finally said. "We'll find another way." And somehow, despite everything, I believed him. We launched WebSphere Solutions from my apartment, with equipment cobbled together from our savings and credit cards. Our office was a wooden desk I'd found on the curb, 2 folding chairs from Walmart, and a whiteboard we'd mounted on the wall without permission. The first 3 months were a barrage of rejection. I made hundreds of cold calls, refining our pitch with each dismissal. Ryan worked tirelessly on the platform, improving features based on feedback from the few people willing to hear us out. We lived on cheap coffee and discount groceries, stretching every dollar until it screamed. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. Timothy Westfield, the marketing director at Regional Healthcare Network, agreed to meet after my 7th follow-up call. "Your persistence impressed me," he admitted when we finally sat across from him in a downtown coffee shop, the only meeting space we could afford. We demonstrated our prototype, explaining how our platform could streamline their digital marketing and provide analytics their current system lacked. Timothy asked tough questions, but I could see the interest in his eyes. "You're rough around the edges," he said, "but you've got something here. Let's start with a 3-month trial." That night, Ryan and I celebrated at my apartment with a splurge, actual delivery pizza instead of the frozen kind. This small victory felt monumental, like the first crack in a dam that had been holding us back. With Timothy's contract as proof of concept, I made the difficult decision to approach my parents about investing. They had about $25,000 in retirement savings. Not much, but enough to help us rent a small office space and buy essential equipment. I wouldn't ask if I didn't believe in this. I explained at their kitchen table, showing them our business plan and Timothy's signed contract. "I promise I'll make it worth your while. Once we're profitable, you'll get your investment back with interest, and I'll be able to help the family even more." My father ran his hands through his thinning hair, looking skeptical. "What happens if this fails, Jennifer? This is all we have." "It won't fail," I said, with a conviction I wasn't entirely sure I felt. "I won't let it." After a week of consideration and countless questions, they agreed to invest. I had my lawyer draw up proper documentation, making them minority shareholders with a 15% stake combined. In that moment, I was simply grateful for their trust, never imagining how that decision would later come back to haunt me. The next 18 months were a blur of 80-hour work weeks. I developed severe insomnia, often going days with only brief naps between client meetings, sales calls, and administrative tasks. My social life disappeared entirely. On my 30th birthday, Ryan had to remind me it was a special occasion I'd completely forgotten in the haze of work. When we finally moved into our first small office, a modest space above a deli in a less expensive part of town, I felt a new sense of legitimacy. Having an actual business address instead of my apartment made WebSphere Solutions feel real in a way it hadn't before. Hiring our first employee was another milestone that brought both pride and terror. Amanda Thompson joined as our client services coordinator, handling the growing administrative load as we acquired more customers. Writing her first paycheck was a sobering moment. Someone else's livelihood now depended on our success. The regional healthcare contract led to referrals, and we soon landed 3 major accounts in succession: a local university, a regional bank, and a chain of fitness centers. Each new client brought both revenue and new challenges as we scaled to meet their needs. During this growth period, my sister Charlotte married Peter Sullivan, an aspiring musician who hadn't held a steady job in years. My parents expected me to pay for a significant portion of the wedding, despite the fact that WebSphere needed every dollar for expansion. "Your sister only gets married once," my mother insisted when I suggested a more modest celebration. "And it's not like you don't have the money now." I ended up writing a check for $15,000. Money that should have gone toward hiring another developer. When Ryan questioned the expense, I made excuses about family obligations rather than admitting the truth. I didn't know how to say no to my family. The moment we hit $500,000 in annual revenue, I took my parents out to dinner to celebrate. Their investment had been crucial, and I wanted to acknowledge that. "We always believed in you," my father said that night, despite years of evidence to the contrary. My mother added, "We're so proud of how you're taking care of the family. That's what matters most." Their words should have warmed my heart, but something about them left me cold. Was that all they saw in my accomplishment? My ability to take care of the family? When my parents' car broke down beyond repair a few months later, I didn't hesitate to buy them a new one. Nothing fancy, but reliable and safe. Their old vehicle had been a constant source of stress, and eliminating that worry seemed like a tangible way to improve their daily lives. The business continued growing, though not without setbacks. A server crash cost us 3 days of productivity and nearly lost us the university account. I developed severe migraines from stress and ended up in the emergency room after collapsing during a client presentation. "You can't keep going like this," Ryan told me during a visit to my hospital room. "The company needs you healthy." What he didn't say, but I could read in his expression, was his concern about my family obligations. He witnessed the constant phone calls, the emergency requests for money, the way I dropped everything when Charlotte or my parents needed something. Thomas Reed from Venture Capital Partners expressed interest in our company after seeing our presentation at a regional business conference. His offer of first-round funding came with difficult terms, but would provide the capital we desperately needed to expand. "Your valuation is approaching $2 million, he told us during negotiations. "That's impressive for a company your age. $2 million. The number seemed surreal. We'd built something valuable from nothing. And part of me wanted to celebrate this milestone, but another part recognized that increased value meant increased expectations from my family. As our team grew to 10 employees, my role evolved from doing everything myself to managing people and processes. The learning curve was steep, but I discovered I had a talent for leadership. Our office expanded to take over the entire second floor above the deli, and we invested in proper furnishings and technology. With success came more family expectations. Charlotte's husband, Peter, decided to start a recording studio business and expected me to provide startup capital. My parents began talking about retirement, hinting that they might need additional support beyond Social Security. And through it all, I kept saying yes, unable to break the pattern established throughout my childhood. As WebSphere Solutions continued to thrive, we moved into a proper office building downtown. The space was 3 times larger than our previous location, with glass-walled conference rooms and an actual reception area. Walking through it the first time, I felt equal parts pride and imposter syndrome. Was this really the company Ryan and I had started at my kitchen table? Our team expanded to 25 employees, each desk representing a person with rent to pay and possibly a family to support. The weight of that responsibility kept me awake many nights, but it also pushed me to work harder to ensure the company remained profitable and growing. With a business valuation approaching $5 million, I decided it was time to move my parents out of their deteriorating neighborhood. I found a comfortable 3-bedroom house in a safe area with good schools nearby. Not because Charlotte still lived at home, but because she and Peter frequently dropped off their kids with my parents when they needed creative time or had gigs. "This is too much, Jennifer," my mother said when I showed them the house, her eyes betraying her words. She wanted the house, but felt obligated to show token resistance. "You deserve it," I replied. "And I can afford it now." My father walked through the room silently, running his hand along the solid countertops and opening cabinets to inspect the quality. Finally, he turned to me. "Your sister could use a new place too, you know." The comment stung, but I'd grown accustomed to such moments, the instant pivot from my achievements to Charlotte's needs. One thing at a time, Dad, was all I could manage in response. Charlotte became pregnant with her second child around this time and promptly quit her minimum wage job at a local craft store. The chemicals might harm the baby, she explained when I asked about her employment status during a family dinner. "Besides, Peter is this close to getting a record deal. We just need to focus on his career right now." My parents nodded as though this made perfect sense, while I calculated how much additional financial support the family would expect from me. I had already been covering Charlotte's health insurance through WebSphere, listing her as a dependent, a questionable practice my accountant had warned against. The dynamic grew increasingly uncomfortable. Charlotte would call me directly when she needed money for doctor's appointments or baby supplies, bypassing our parents entirely. "You're my successful big sister," she would say with practiced admiration. "I'm so lucky to have you looking out for me." At home, my parents spoke about me with pride to neighbors and friends. "Our Jennifer runs her own company," they would boast. But in private conversations, they focused exclusively on what more I could do for the family, particularly for Charlotte. I overheard my mother on the phone once, telling her sister, "Jennifer could certainly help Charlotte with a down payment for a house if she wanted to. It's not like she doesn't have the money." The resentment I felt conflicted with the responsibility I'd internalized. Wasn't this why I'd worked so hard to take care of my family? But the one-sided nature of our relationship had become impossible to ignore. My achievements were valued primarily for their utility to others, not as accomplishments in their own right. It was at a client event that I met Michael Anderson, an architect whose firm had recently signed with WebSphere. He was intelligent, funny, and refreshingly direct. When he asked me to dinner, I surprised myself by accepting. Between building the business and managing family obligations, dating had been non-existent for years. "Tell me about yourself," Michael said during our first date. "And I don't mean WebSphere. I want to know about Jennifer." The question caught me off guard. Who was I apart from my company and my role as family provider? I struggled to answer, realizing how much of my identity had been consumed by responsibilities to others. As we continued dating, Michael noticed the constant interruptions from my family. The calls during dinner, the weekend events canceled because Charlotte needed something, the way my expression changed whenever my parents' number appeared on my phone. They rely on you a lot, he observed carefully after I cut our weekend getaway short because my parents' air conditioning broke. They need me, I replied automatically. Michael chose his next words carefully. There's a difference between supporting family and being taken advantage of, Jennifer. No one had ever suggested my family dynamic might be unhealthy. His comment opened a door I hadn't allowed myself to look through before, but I quickly closed it again. You don't understand. They sacrificed a lot for me growing up. But Michael's observation lingered, making me more aware of patterns I'd previously accepted without question. With WebSphere's continued success, I decided to formalize the company's share structure more officially. My parents already had their 15% stake from their initial investment, which had grown significantly in value. I consulted with our company attorney about possibly extending some shares to Charlotte as well, thinking it might provide her with passive income and reduce the direct financial requests. Meanwhile, Charlotte's demands grew more specific and expensive. Her children needed private school because the public options weren't good enough. Their house needed renovations because it was affecting the children's health. Peter's studio needed upgraded equipment because the industry standard had changed. Each request came with emotional leverage, subtle reminders of childhood sacrifices, implications that refusing meant I didn't really love my family, suggestions that my success obligated me to others. The breaking point came when I overheard my mother on the phone while visiting their home. Jennifer just doesn't understand how hard things are for Charlotte, she said to whoever was on the line. She's always been selfish with her money. You'd think with all her success, she would do more. I stood frozen in the hallway, a gift basket of expensive groceries in my arms, groceries I'd brought because my mother had mentioned they were too expensive on my father's pension. In that moment, something shifted inside me. The narrative I'd accepted my entire life, that I was responsible for everyone else's welfare, that my value was measured by what I gave, suddenly felt like a chain around my neck. When Peter's recording studio failed after less than a year, everyone expected me to cover the losses. $60,000 of debt magically became my responsibility because family helps family. I wrote the check, but felt nothing but resentment as I did so. WebSphere reached an $8 million valuation on our 5th anniversary. Ryan organized a small celebration at the office, complete with champagne and a cake shaped like our company logo. We did it, he said, raising his glass. From your kitchen table to this. I'm proud of us. That same week, I received a regional business award recognizing female entrepreneurs. The ceremony was on a Thursday evening, and I invited my entire family to attend. None of them showed up. Charlotte had a migraine. Peter had a gig. And my parents needed to watch the grandkids. I sat alone at the table reserved for my family, accepting congratulations from strangers while the empty chairs mocked me. Michael attended in their place, arriving late after an emergency at work, but making it in time to see me receive the award. You deserve to be celebrated, he whispered as I returned to the table, trophy in hand. The favoritism towards Charlotte had become so obvious that even employees noticed it. When my parents visited the office, they spent most of the time talking about Charlotte's children and making excuses for her various failures, barely acknowledging the business I'd built. You need to set some boundaries, Michael suggested after witnessing a particularly uncomfortable family dinner where my parents praised Charlotte's new hobby of painting, which I had paid for, while barely asking about the company. The idea of boundaries felt foreign and frightening. What would happen if I stopped being the provider? Would there be anything left of our relationship at all? After much consideration, I decided to organize a special family dinner to discuss the future direction of WebSphere. Our attorney had suggested setting up trust funds or more sophisticated shareholding arrangements. As the company continued to grow, I thought this might be an opportunity to formalize expectations and perhaps establish some healthier patterns. In preparation, I consulted our lawyer. I wanted everything to be above board and properly documented moving forward. As the dinner approached, I felt increasing anxiety. Something about my parents' recent behavior suggested an entitlement that went beyond normal family expectations. Charlotte had made several comments about her share of the business, despite having contributed nothing to its creation or growth. But nothing prepared me for what actually happened at that dinner. I decided to host the dinner at my parents' house, the house I had purchased for them, thinking the familiar environment would make the conversation more comfortable. I brought an expensive bottle of champagne to celebrate WebSphere's continued success and the family's part in it. The evening started pleasantly enough. Charlotte and Peter arrived late as usual, with their children who immediately ran to the playroom my parents had set up for them. My mother had prepared my favorite meal from childhood, roast chicken with mashed potatoes and green beans, a gesture that touched me despite the tension I'd been feeling. During the main course, I shared our latest company milestones, a major new client in the healthcare sector, plans to expand to the West Coast, and a potential partnership with a complementary tech firm Ryan and I had been working on. These developments had been months in the making, and I was genuinely excited to share the news. That all sounds wonderful, honey, my mother said, but her eyes kept darting toward my father, some unspoken communication passing between them. After dessert, a store-bought cheesecake, despite my mother knowing I would have happily brought one from the artisanal bakery near my office, my father cleared his throat in the way he always did before making an announcement. Jennifer, your mother and I have been talking, he began, his tone oddly formal, about the shares in your company. I nodded, thinking this was leading into the very conversation I had planned. Yes, I wanted to discuss that tonight. Actually, I've been speaking with our attorney about, we've made a decision, he interrupted, something he rarely did. We've given your shares to your sister. She needs them more than you do. The words didn't make sense at first. They hung in the air like an abstract concept I couldn't quite grasp. What do you mean, you've given my shares? The 15% you own. My mother reached over to pat my hand. It's for the best, dear. Charlotte has the children to think about, and you know how Peter's career is still developing. But those shares are yours, I said, still trying to understand. Part of your retirement plan. My father's expression hardened. And we can do what we want with them. We're giving them to Charlotte. Charlotte sat straighter in her chair, a smug smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Not a hint of gratitude or humility, just entitlement fulfilled. You can't just transfer shares without proper documentation, I explained, my business mind taking over while my emotional self remained in shock. There are legal processes, tax implications. Your lawyer already handled it. My father interrupted again. We called him last week. The betrayal sliced deeper. My own company attorney had facilitated this without telling me? That seemed impossible. Unless they hadn't actually spoken to him at all. They were bluffing or worse, had fallen for some kind of scam. Which lawyer, exactly? I asked, keeping my voice steady despite the hammering of my heart. The company one, my father said vaguely. Thompson or Thomas or whatever his name is. Thomas Reed was our venture capitalist. Thompson was nobody. They were lying. But the intent behind the lie was just as painful as if they'd actually managed to transfer the shares. I see, I said quietly. My father must have misinterpreted my calm for acceptance, because he added with a dismissive wave, you can always make more money, Jennifer. That's what you're good at. Charlotte can't. She needs security for her future. The implication was clear. My worth was in my ability to generate income for others. Nothing more. Not my hard work, not my sacrifices, not the years of supporting them all. Just a resource to be tapped. An ATM with legs. Charlotte finally spoke, her voice syrupy sweet. We're so grateful, Jenny. This will make such a difference for the kids' college funds. College funds? The children were 3 and 5 years old. If Charlotte had been receiving actual shares worth over $1 million at current valuation, there would be no need to think about college funds. The money would have far exceeded any educational expenses. Her statement confirmed what I already suspected. None of them truly understood the value or function of business shares. In that moment, I saw my family clearly for perhaps the first time. The realization was both liberating and excruciating. Years of being used, of conditional love based on what I could provide, of being valued only for my utility. It all crystallized in a single, painful moment of clarity. Is that so? I replied, my voice eerily calm. Something in my tone must have alerted my father, because his expression shifted slightly. Now, don't take this the wrong way. We're still a family. We're just evening things out between you girls. Evening things out? As if my years of financial support, the house they sat in, the car in their garage, the vacations I'd paid for, the medical bills I'd covered, as if all of that counted for nothing in their calculation of fairness. I understand completely, I said, standing up. If you'll excuse me, I need to get going. Early meeting tomorrow. But you haven't had coffee yet, my mother protested weakly. And I thought we could look at those photos from Charlotte's painting class. Another time, I said, gathering my purse and the untouched champagne bottle. Thank you for dinner. The drive home passed in a blur. I made it to my driveway before the first tear fell. And then it was as if a dam broke. I sobbed in my car like I hadn't since childhood, great, heaving cries that left me gasping for breath. Years of repressed hurt poured out at once, not just from tonight's betrayal, but from a lifetime of being valued only for what I could give. Around midnight, I called Michael. Can you talk? I asked when he answered, my voice still rough from crying. What happened? He asked immediately, concern evident even through the phone. I told him everything, the dinner, the shares, my father's words. He listened without interrupting, only offering support when I finished. Jennifer, I'm so sorry, he said finally. But I'm not surprised. This has been their pattern for as long as I've known them. I know, I admitted. I just couldn't see it clearly until now. What do you want to do? He asked, the simple question offering what my family never had: agency, choice, respect for my decisions. I don't want to just be hurt, I said, a new resolve forming. I want to take action. After we hung up, I spent hours analyzing every financial connection between myself and my family. The mortgage on their house was in my name. The car was registered to me. Their health insurance supplemental policy was through my company benefits as a dependent. Charlotte's children's private school tuition came directly from my account quarterly. I wouldn't do anything vindictive. That wasn't who I wanted to be. But I needed to disentangle myself from the parasitic relationship that had formed. First, I accessed the company account where I kept my personal investments separate from operational funds. I withdrew every penny I had contributed beyond the essential working capital funds I had planned to use for our West Coast expansion. The business could survive without immediate expansion, but I needed these resources now to protect myself. Next, I emailed Ryan. Despite the late hour, he responded within minutes. After explaining the situation, I outlined my proposed next steps. His response was immediate and supportive. Whatever you need, we'll figure this out together. They can't actually touch your shares without documentation you would have had to sign. He was right. Of course, my parents' 15% was legally theirs to transfer if they somehow figured out the proper process. But they couldn't touch my majority stake. Still, their intent was clear, and I needed to protect the company as well as myself. As dawn broke, I felt oddly calm. The pain remained, but alongside it grew a clarity I had never experienced before. For the first time, I saw my relationship with my family for what it truly was, not the mutual support system I had pretended it to be, but a one-way flow of resources and emotional labor. The question now was, what to do with this clarity? My father called at 7:30 the next morning, his voice tense. Jennifer, something's wrong with the house account. The mortgage payment was due yesterday, but the automatic payment didn't go through. Of course, he would notice the financial consequences first. Not my abrupt departure from dinner, not my obvious distress, but the interruption of funds. I've made some changes to my financial arrangements, I explained calmly. The mortgage is still covered for this month, but going forward, you'll need to handle the payments. What are you talking about? His voice rose in pitch. We can't afford the mortgage on this place. You know that. That's why you bought it for us. I didn't buy it for you, Dad. The house is in my name. I've been making the payments. There's a difference. The silence on his end suggested this distinction had never occurred to him. What's gotten into you? Is this because of last night? We thought you'd be happy we were looking out for Charlotte's future. The disconnect was so profound it almost made me laugh. I need to go, Dad. I have a meeting now. Wait just a minute, I hung up. Something I had never done before. My phone immediately rang again, this time showing my mother's number. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was tearful and accusatory. Jennifer, how could you do this to us after everything we've done for you? Your father is beside himself. Call us immediately. Everything they'd done for me. The irony was painful. I texted a brief response. I'm taking some time to reconsider our financial arrangements. I'll be in touch once I've had time to think. Within an hour, I received multiple texts from Charlotte, each more frantic than the last. Mom says you're cutting us off. What about the kids' tuition? Are you seriously doing this because Mom and Dad want to help me too? I thought you were different. I thought you cared about family. Peter's message followed. You're being manipulative and controlling with your money. I silenced my phone and focused on preparing for the day ahead. This included an emergency meeting with our actual company attorney, Sarah Peterson, who was appropriately shocked when I explained what had transpired. They can't transfer shares they don't have proper documentation for, she confirmed. But the fact that they attempted this is concerning. We should review all company ownership documents immediately and secure everything. Before I could respond, my office phone rang. The receptionist sounded uncomfortable. Your parents and sister are here. They're quite insistent about seeing you right away. Taking a deep breath, I told her to send them to the conference room. Sarah, would you mind sitting in on this meeting? I asked my attorney. That's what I'm here for, she replied, gathering her notepad. The scene in the conference room was tense. My father's face was flushed with anger. My mother's eyes were red from crying, and Charlotte looked like she might explode. What is the meaning of this? My father demanded as soon as I entered. Cutting off the mortgage? Charlotte says her tuition payment for the kids was declined this morning too. I think we need to clarify some boundaries, I said, taking a seat across from them. Sarah is our company attorney. She's here to address any questions about WebSphere specifically. We don't need a lawyer, my mother interjected. This is family business. That's exactly the problem, I replied evenly. There's been a harmful blur between family and business that needs to be resolved. Charlotte slammed her hand on the table. Just say it directly. You're punishing us because Mom and Dad want to help me too. No one is punishing anyone, I said, maintaining my composure. I'm simply separating my business assets from personal giving. You can't demand shares of a company you've contributed nothing to. My father's expression darkened. We invested in you from the beginning. That 15% is ours to do with as we please. Yes, your 15% is legally yours, I acknowledged. And if you want to transfer it to Charlotte, that's your choice, though there are proper legal channels for doing so. But that's very different from what you implied last night. What are you talking about? My mother asked, genuine confusion in her voice. I looked directly at my father. You said you were giving my shares to Charlotte. Not your shares, mine. As if you had that right. He shifted uncomfortably. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant, I countered. And it made me realize something important. You see me as a resource, not a person. My value to this family is measured by what I provide financially, nothing more. That's not true, my mother protested. Isn't it? I pulled out a folder and placed it on the table. Here's a list of every financial contribution I've made to this family over the past 5 years. I read it aloud. House mortgage, $420,000. Car payments, $37,000. Health insurance premiums, $65,000. Charlotte's children's tuition, $92,000. Peter's failed studio, $60,000. Family vacations, $43,000. Regular cash gifts when requested, approximately $130,000. The total was staggering when laid out so plainly, nearly $800,000 over 5 years, not counting countless smaller expenses I hadn't documented. And what have I received in return? I continued. Not gratitude, not respect, not even acknowledgement. Instead, I got accusations of not doing enough, of being selfish with my money, and an attempt to claim ownership of something I built through years of 80-hour work weeks. Charlotte recovered first. So this is about money for you? Proving how generous you've been, holding it over our heads. No, I said quietly. It's about recognizing a painful truth. Our relationship isn't based on mutual care and respect. It's transactional, and the transaction only goes one way. My father's face had grown increasingly red during my explanation. Now he stood abruptly. We're not going to sit here and be lectured by our own daughter. Either you continue to help this family as you should, or the unfinished threat hung in the air. Or what? They would stop. Loving me? That love already seemed conditional at best. I think you should leave now, I said calmly. When you're ready to discuss a healthy relationship that isn't based solely on financial support, I'll be here. After they stormed out, Sarah looked at me with newfound respect. That couldn't have been easy. It wasn't, I admitted. But it was necessary. Later that day, Ryan called an emergency board meeting to address the potential shareholder issue. He had been my rock throughout this crisis, his loyalty never wavering despite the chaos my family had created. Your parents can't touch the company directly, he assured the small board. Jennifer's majority stake is secure, and we've already implemented additional protections. The next few days brought escalating attempts at emotional manipulation from my family. My mother left tearful voicemails about how they might lose the house. Charlotte sent photos of her children with captions like, wondering why Aunt Jennifer doesn't love them anymore. My father's messages grew increasingly hostile, then suddenly switched to apologetic, then back to demanding. I maintained my distance, focusing instead on working with Sarah to create clear separation between my personal assets and family entanglements. The situation took an unexpected turn when Peter showed up at the office demanding to speak with me. Our receptionist, alarmed by his aggressive behavior, called security. You can't hide behind your fancy lawyers, he shouted as security escorted him from the building. We know our rights. Their rights. The phrase echoed in my head long after he was gone. In their minds, access to my success was their right, not a privilege or gift. That evening, Ryan, Sarah, and I met to develop a comprehensive strategy. We need to protect both you and the company, Sarah explained. Your parents' shares are legally theirs, but we can create a new business entity structure that dilutes the impact of that 15%. I don't want to be vindictive, I emphasized. I just need protection from further attempts to take what I've built. It's not vindictive to protect yourself, Ryan assured me. It's necessary. The plan we developed was multifaceted. First, we would create a holding company that would own the intellectual property and key assets. Second, we would reach out to our most important clients to ensure continuity of service regardless of any shareholder disputes. And third, we would document all communications with my family in case legal action became necessary. Timothy Westfield, our first major client, who had become something of a mentor to me over the years, was among the first I called. After explaining the situation in broad terms, he didn't hesitate. Wherever you go, we go with you, Jennifer. Our relationship is with you, not the company structure. His loyalty brought tears to my eyes, the kind of loyalty my own family had never shown. Most of our other key clients expressed similar sentiments. They trusted me, respected the business I'd built, and would follow if necessary. Within days, we began to see the consequences of my family's actions. Without my guidance, they had attempted to assert control over company decisions based on their minority stake. The board easily blocked these efforts, but the disruption was taking a toll on day-to-day operations. By the end of the week, WebSphere's stock value had dipped slightly, the first downturn in our steady growth. Employees were whispering about the family drama, distracted from their work by the uncommon tension. I called an all-hands meeting to address the situation directly. There are some personal and structural changes happening, I explained to the team, but our core business remains strong. Our client relationships are secure, and our mission hasn't changed. The transparency seemed to ease concerns, at least within the company, but the situation with my family continued to deteriorate. A month after the fateful dinner, Charlotte attempted to step into a leadership role at WebSphere, apparently believing the 15% stake gave her that right. She showed up at the office unannounced, introducing herself to employees as part owner and new creative director. Ryan called me immediately. Charlotte is here telling the design team to change our brand colors. Says purple represents abundance and wealth. Under different circumstances, it might have been comical. Charlotte, whose professional experience consisted of brief stints in retail and food service, attempting to direct seasoned designers and developers. But the disruption to the workplace was serious, and I drove straight to the office. I found her in the conference room, surrounded by confused designers. I'm thinking we need more inspirational quotes on the website, she was saying. People connect with wisdom. Charlotte, we need to talk privately, I said from the doorway. She turned, a strange mix of defiance and uncertainty on her face. I'm in the middle of a creative direction meeting. No, you're not. You don't work here. I kept my voice level but firm. Please join me in my office now. The conversation that followed was difficult but necessary. I explained that ownership shares didn't confer operational authority, especially minority shares that weren't even properly transferred yet. I outlined the legal implications of disrupting a business without authorization. And finally, I made it clear that her presence without invitation wouldn't be tolerated again. You just can't stand that I might have something of my own, she accused, tears forming. You've always needed to be the successful one. The irony was painful. Charlotte, I've spent years helping you have something of your own. I paid for your wedding, your house renovations, Peter's studio, your children's education. I've never begrudged you anything until you tried to claim credit for something you didn't build. Mom and Dad said the shares would let me be part of the company, she insisted. Did they explain what shares actually are? What responsibilities come with them? What the legal implications are? Her blank expression answered my question. My parents had dangled ownership in my company without understanding it themselves, using it as yet another way to extract resources for Charlotte without regard for me or the business I'd built. After Charlotte left, Ryan suggested accelerating our protection plan. This is getting out of hand. We need to secure the company now. He was right. Within days, we had established a new corporate structure that effectively protected the company's core assets and operations. My parents' shares in the original entity remained intact, but had been strategically diluted in the new structure. The family reactions were predictable. My father called, irate about corporate trickery. My mother pleaded that they were just trying to help Charlotte. Charlotte herself oscillated between angry accusations and tearful attempts at reconciliation, depending on which approach she thought might work better. For the first time in my life, I held firm against the tidal wave of emotional manipulation. Each call, each text, each demand reinforced the rightness of my decision to establish boundaries. Thanksgiving arrived during this tumultuous period. Traditionally, I would have hosted the family dinner at my home, or joined them at their house, the house I had purchased. This year, I accepted Michael's invitation to join his family instead. The contrast was illuminating. Michael's parents asked about my business with genuine interest, not just to calculate what I could provide. His siblings shared both successes and failures without judgment or competition. When I offered to help clear the table after dinner, Michael's mother thanked me sincerely, rather than treating it as expected service. Is family always like this for you? I asked Michael as we drove home. Like what? Supportive. Interested in each other as people, not resources. He glanced at me quickly before returning his eyes to the road. That's what family should be, Jennifer. Mutual support, not one-way extraction. Meanwhile, WebSphere was thriving under the new structure. Freed from the constant drain of family demands, I could focus fully on leadership and innovation. We secured 3 major new clients and expanded our service offerings. Employee morale improved as the workplace drama subsided. The new company entity, Phoenix Digital Solutions, quickly established itself as a rising star in the industry. Many clients transferred their contracts seamlessly, following my leadership rather than remaining with the WebSphere name. Charlotte made a desperate attempt to persuade me to return to the original arrangement. The company is suffering without you, she admitted during an unexpected visit to my condo. Dad says the value is dropping every day. That's not my responsibility anymore, I replied. You all wanted control without understanding what that meant. Now you have it. My father reached out next, his message more subdued than previous communications. We may have made a mistake, he conceded, though he couldn't quite bring himself to apologize directly. The business consultants we hired say the company needs your leadership. I almost laughed at the irony. They had hired consultants with money I had provided to tell them what Ryan and I had already explained. Successful businesses don't run themselves, and expertise can't be claimed, only earned. I've moved on, I told him simply. Phoenix is my focus now. The separation proved essential for my personal healing as well. I began therapy to address the deeply ingrained patterns of caretaking and self-sacrifice that had defined my life. My therapist helped me recognize the childhood conditioning that had led me to equate love with provision, worth with utility. You were parentified at a very young age, she explained during one session. Made responsible for adult concerns and family welfare before you had the emotional capacity to understand the burden. This framework helped me make sense of my family dynamics without excusing the exploitation. I could understand the pattern while still refusing to perpetuate it. Michael remained a steady support throughout this challenging year. He had witnessed my struggle to establish boundaries without becoming bitter, to protect myself without punishing others. When he proposed 6 months after the WebSphere sale, I accepted without the hesitation that would have plagued me before. Your family is invited to the wedding, he said as we discussed plans, but only if their presence will support your happiness, not diminish it. The consideration behind his words brought tears to my eyes. For the first time in my life, someone was prioritizing my well-being without expecting anything in return. My healing journey involved multiple approaches. Weekly therapy helped me identify and address the deeply rooted beliefs about my value being tied to provision. Meditation and yoga gave me tools to manage anxiety when family interactions triggered old patterns. Perhaps most importantly, I built a community of supportive friends and colleagues who demonstrated what healthy relationships actually looked like. I found unexpected purpose in mentoring other female entrepreneurs, particularly those struggling with family expectations while building their businesses. Their stories often echoed aspects of my own, and sharing my experience helped them establish healthier boundaries from the start. You can love your family without sacrificing your well-being, I would tell them. In fact, healthy boundaries often lead to healthier relationships in the long run. 6 weeks before my wedding, I invited my entire family to dinner, parents, Charlotte, Peter, their children. The event was a test of sorts, a chance to see whether our new boundaries could support a modified relationship. To my surprise, Charlotte arrived without Peter, her demeanor more subdued than I remembered. He's not in the picture anymore, she explained briefly when I inquired about his absence. The children seemed happy to see me, though they had grown considerably in the months since our last meeting. Dinner proceeded with a strange new dynamic. My parents were careful with their words, avoiding direct requests for assistance. Charlotte mentioned looking for work, something she hadn't done in years. When the check came, no one assumed I would cover it, a small but significant shift. I'm getting my teaching certificate, Charlotte said as dessert was served. The community college has a program that works around the kids' schedules. That's wonderful, I replied, genuinely pleased by this development. Teaching would suit you well. A flicker of something crossed her face, pride, perhaps, or determination. I need to stand on my own feet. Recent events made that pretty clear. It wasn't an apology or full acknowledgement of her role in what had transpired, but it was movement in a healthier direction. I chose to acknowledge the positive step rather than dwelling on past injuries. The gathering ended without drama or new wounds, a modest success by the standards of our family history. As they prepared to leave, my father awkwardly mentioned my upcoming wedding. We received the invitation, he said. We'd like to come if that's still all right. I'd like that, I replied simply. In the car afterward, Michael asked how I felt about the evening. Hopeful, I said after consideration. Not for a perfect relationship or complete understanding, but for something healthier than what we had before. They're trying in their way. Building Phoenix taught me about business strategy and leadership, but rebuilding my sense of self-worth proved the more valuable education. I learned that love shouldn't come with invoices attached. That helping others is beautiful when chosen, toxic when demanded. That family is about mutual support, not one-way extraction. Most importantly, I discovered that my value exists independently of what I can provide to others. A truth so obvious to some, yet revolutionary for those of us raised to be caretakers at our own expense. Today, Phoenix continues to grow. My marriage to Michael brings daily joy, and my family relationships exist within careful boundaries that protect everyone involved. The journey wasn't easy, but the destination proved worth every painful step. If you've ever found yourself giving until there's nothing left, please remember, establishing boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary for authentic relationships. True love supports your wholeness, not just your usefulness. What was your biggest takeaway from my story? Share in the comments below. And if it resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear this message. Thank you for listening to my journey. May it help you navigate your own with courage and self-respect.